In the previous section, we learned about how to color correct certain things, how to bring the image looking like normal or looking like how we desire it to be. Now, we're going to be giving a certain look to an image. We're going to be changing some colors in the image, and then we're going to be making it more dramatic, more cinematic if it's required. So yeah, let's start. Let's take this image for an example. So this is a really long clip. I think if you go to media pool, it should be somewhere here. Yeah, so it is in the color grading folder, clip number 2631. And in this clip, I have, paused at this frame because I think that this is the master frame, because here you can see the subject, you can see the skin color of the subject, you can see the greens, you can see the reds, it's pink here, you can see the yellows, you can see the blue sky. Here what I want to do is to show you something really cool. So what I would do is, this is white balance. Here I think the white balance is really perfect because you can see here the reds are almost of the same shape as the greens and the blues. It's not like crazy difference. That's really good. Then we have the exposure. Exposure looks really fine. I think you see that nothing is peeking out, and here nothing is going below this line, so that's really good. And then we do here maybe final, if we need to do some changes later. Now we're going to be doing a look. So here what we would be doing is we're going to label this node hue versus hue, because now we're going to be doing color grading using the curves. There's a lot of ways with which you can do color grading. There is one way with which you can select, qualify each color, and then change the color of that thing, and then qualify the sky, then change the color of that, qualify the yellows, change the color of that according to how you want. I used to do that, but I think it's really time consuming and it's also not very accurate. So I'll show you another way. If you go to the custom curves, which looks like this, but then if you go here, we have different kinds of curves. The first one is hue versus hue, hue versus saturation, hue versus luminance. I'll explain you what hue is. Hue is a color of, for example, yellow. This is not yellow. So the hues of yellow would be all different tones of yellows. For example, if we go here in the primary color wheels, and if we change the hues of the thing, you can see that the hues of yellow could be any of these colors. Yeah. And hue of the sky could be any of these colors. So hue is just different variation of, I'll just reset it. So hue is just different variation of a certain color. And that's what is represented in hue versus hue curves. For example, as soon as you go to the curve, then you have this selector on. We don't have the cursor anymore, we have this selector. So say for example, if you wanna select the sky, so you just click on the sky, and as soon as you click on the sky, if you come to hue versus hue curve, then you see that DaVinci Resolve has made a point here. So this point lies where this blue color exists in the frame. So what we can do, if you want to change color of blues, what we can do is that we can make the margin a little bit more so that we make sure that all of our blues are selected. And if we just bring it up and down, that would change the hues of just the blues in the image. So if we bring it up, you can see that it's kind of turned into teal, but then it's coming into green and some different colors. Same if we go all the way down, then you see that it was becoming more sky blue, but now it's becoming purple, pink, and then, yeah, all different color. What usually we see in movies or we see on YouTube is the teal and orange kind of look, a little bit. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna change the color of the sky to teal. So we just lift this a little bit, and then if we go full screen, Control plus F, Command plus F, and then we go Command D or Control D, so you can see before and after. So you can see that just the color of blues has changed. If the subject was also wearing some blue clothes, it would also change. So that looks nice. That was, you can change the color of the sky. And then here we want to change the color of the grass, not change, but just tweak the color of the grass, I should say. So you see, if I maybe just click here in the greens here, so that selects this part of the green. So what I want to do is that make the selection a little bit bigger, so as soon as you click on this graph in the middle or whatever point, it makes new points. So here what we can do is that increase the it to a little bit yellowish side, so it gives a bit more summer vibe, you know. So if we go full screen, go before, there's a very very minor change. For example, if we pushed it all the way here, then you would have crazy different color before and after. But if we just go a little bit higher, you know, then you would have, rather than like dark green, more yellowish kind of color, more summery look. You see the before and after, that is also changing color of the sky. And now what are we gonna do is we're gonna see if we need to change the color of the reds, because here I see that the skin tones are really nice. What I would do in this image is that I still don't see her face really good. So what I would do here is I would make a little circle around her face, you know, with the window tool. Let's do that not in exposure, just in final. So just around the face, I will make it like this, and then I would, you know, make it a bit more softer, so it's like looking like this. Make it a little bit more small, because the other part of the image is really well exposed. I just want to expose this part. So yeah, and once this part is selected, then I go to just the normal primary wheels and then increase the shadow. So here if we go full screen, then you can see that the face was super dark, now it's a bit bright. And now if we can track it, let's just go with normal. Yeah, it tracked really good, but this clip in reality is really long, but I chose a little part of the clip. So you have to also make sure that just choose a little part of the clip just for the sake of the example, because here, yeah, DaVinci now would track the face until the end of this clip. So that's why it's good to do these trackings in small clips, because then there is not much movement. So that's what I always do, that when I'm doing color grading, I go back to, you know, color correction nodes here. But yeah, hue versus hue, I don't know, maybe I'll change the yellows a little bit. So I go to the curve, maybe click on the yellow. So here is yellow, so I want to make it more like orange-ish, just a little bit. Yeah. So now if we go full screen before and after, you can see that the color has changed. And now I want to show you something really important. So if we go to parade here on the right hand side, and now if we go to vector scope, what vector scope does is that it shows the skin tones, if they are neutral, if they are looking good or not. So if something is lying on this line, that is the skin tone. So say for example, if I just click on the face here, so if I click on the face, there should be another dot here. So I think that's the dot. That's the dot what happened when I click on the face. And as soon as I move this up and down, you can see that there's a little line here. If I go full screen of vector, oh, you can also go full screen, but now you don't see the window, because yeah, we are just using one monitor now. You can also split it, and yeah, you can bring all the information, but so I will just close it here in the corner and then it goes out. So if you see this little line here, that line should ideally fall on this line, because this is the reference line for the how the face should be, the color of the face should be. So I would just make sure that that line is lying on this line. Sometimes it's not that accurate, but you also have to trust your eyes sometimes. But now we can see that the skin tones are lying good on the vector scope here, because earlier it was, this dot was here, and then you can see that the colors were a little bit shifted to the bottom of vector scope. And now if we go a little bit up, so now it lies on the line, and let's see if it's really helping. So that was the color before, it was a bit more yellowish, and now it's bringing a bit more orangish reddish tone. So this looks pretty good. What we also forgot here was to bring back the saturation. So what I would do up from here, I would do color boost. But this color boost, I am doing it because my Sony camera, I don't shoot in crazy saturation. So every time in post, I have to do a little bit of saturation here. But you don't have to do it, depends on your camera. But if you are practicing with me here, then you should do it. But it's also my choice, because I want the image to look like, you know, very colorful and happy and popping. So this was before the color boost. This is really minor change. This is after the color boost. So if we do before and after, this was before the entire image, this was after, before and after. There's not much crazy change because we didn't do much in the exposure, but yeah, let's go to Parade again. So yeah, that is how it looks. And maybe I might reduce, try to, you know, get a little bit of contrast, more contrast in the image. It's always like with color grading, you always want to do a little bit more, even if it's not needed, but I just want to see how it looks. So, and then increase the lift a little bit. Maybe I increase the gains a bit too much. Now here you can see the shots are just falling apart. The image looks nice, but you can see that this line here, that represents this. Everything else looks good. Here what we're going to be doing is, in the final, we can maybe add another Option S and do the highlight thing what we did before. So we're going to be going to the qualifier, then go to luminance. I think it would probably be here. I will just check here. The highlight area, and then maybe go this. Maybe until this part. And then take the highlight out. And here we go to HDR and reduce the highlight. I am not sure if it's doing much, but maybe let's also try to bring the graph down. It's doing a little bit, but it's obviously not as good as how it should be before. So maybe we can reduce the brightness a little bit. Maybe we can increase the gamma, the midtones, and bring the highlights down. So what is happening now is that the gamma is increasing the midtones of the image, you know, because most of the things lies in the midtone. The only thing lies in the highlights is this area. So we reduce the highlight a little bit and increase the gamma to lift up the entire image. So if we go before and after exposure, did we need it? Probably not, but now if we did it, it looks nice. And here also, this is not really playing a major key role, but I'll just leave it there. And then we have the shadows on the face. That's also really looking nice. And the color boost is also really looking nice. So here we were at the hue versus hue curve. So if you go before and after for hue versus hue, you can check the colors are changing. It looks nice. We have another curve after this. So what are we going to do? Now we're going to be adding a parallel node. And what this would do is that if we go here, so then it's a bit more clear, and I can make the nodes a little bit smaller. So what's happening here is that all the information after the exposure, after the color boost, I want that information to go to hue versus hue. And then I also want the same information to go to hue versus saturation. I think that's the next curve. Hue versus saturation. So I will just label hue versus sat, because that's the curve we're going to be working. And then we have another curve. We add parallel. We go add node label hue versus luminance. So here in hue versus saturation, I personally think that the sky is a little too blue. Yeah, so we were before hue versus hue, which was here. We changed all the hues. Now we can still do hue versus saturation, hue versus luminance in the same curve, but just for the sake of this tutorial, to show you exactly what hue versus saturation is doing, I'm making a different node. And I actually usually do this as well, just to make my life a little bit easier. So here, if I just select the sky, so I want the blues to be a little bit less saturated. So we just increase this range. If I wanted to do it to be more saturated, oh, I'm still on hue versus hue. Let's refresh that. We go to hue versus saturation. Select the sky, increase the area of the blues, and then reduce the blues here. So if I go all the way down, you can see that just the saturation of blues are gone. And if I go all the way up, the blues are up. What I would do is I just reduce it down a little bit. Maybe just that. So let's go before and after. You don't see much crazy difference, but I think I would just prefer that. And then these greens, they're looking a bit desaturated. So what I'm going to do, I go to greens, just increase this range and maybe increase the color of the greens. So let's see if it's making any difference. So if I go a bit more saturating, a bit more range of the greens, so you can see here that now the greens are a little bit more saturated. It's not that abrupt because these greens are also a bit more not super bright on this day. And then I think that this bag is a bit too yellow, so I want to reduce it. But this color grading, what I think is just what I think. You can think that it's looking really fine, but I would reduce this. So yeah, that's why color grading is a really subjective thing, which yeah. Color grading is a really subjective thing, which some of you might like, some of you might not. It's really up to the style of the person. So that was hue versus saturation. So here what we did, reduce the saturation of the blues, increase the saturation of the greens, and reduce the saturation of the yellows. We didn't do anything with the reds because here at this point, I think I really like the skin color. So hue versus saturation, this was before, this is after. There's not much change. Even if you see the graph, there's just a little bit of change, but it still does something. And now we go to hue versus luminance. So hue versus saturation was of course increasing or reducing the saturation. Luminance is, as I told before, is the brightness of an image. So in this graph, what happens is, if you go to here, hue versus luminance, what happens is by selecting like blues, you can select the brightness of the blue. So either you can make it super bright, you know, all the blues, or make it super dark. But here I think maybe a little bit bright is enough. Blues, so if you go before and after, just makes it look like a super bright day. The greens, I would want it to be a little more darker. And then the skin color, I want them to pop out a little bit, because you see if I go like this, you can pop out this skin a lot, but I would just go just this much. This was before, this is after. Maybe this bag, this yellow color, I want it to be a little bit low. Don't want it to be too bright because I want the focus to be on the skin, not on the bag. Maybe just bring all this down. So you see, now what can we do? We can select hue versus all the curves, hue versus hue, saturation, luminance, and then we go before and after, Command plus D. This was before the image, and then this is after. So you see, we changed a lot of colors, and this is the look. This looks really good, really summery look. If we want to save it, what can we do? If we want to put the same look on some other clip, what do? You go to right click. Let's bring the gallery here. You already see there's a picture here. You go right click, you go grab still. You grab still, and if I want to put this on some other clip, you can also go to the next clip by clicking this. Yeah, you go to clips, and maybe I'll drag a similar clip in my timeline. So this was the clip, maybe this clip on my timeline, just here somewhere. What can we do here? It was on the same day, so everything should look technically the same. Easy, we can just apply grade. So once we apply the grade, that's like color grade, then you have the same node tree here. But here you can see the exposure level is completely different than how it was in the last picture, because here there's some random dot which has the increased shadow. We don't need it, so you just reset it. Exposure is a little bit different. We don't need lift here. Maybe gain, yeah, maybe gamma we need, but here I think we need a lot of shadows, because all the areas which is in the dark here, that is super dark. So we're gonna be increasing the shadows and see how much we can increase without the image falling apart. So I think that is a good number. Maybe increase the lift also a little bit, just until here. And I see that the exposure is going all the way. This looks pretty good. But here I also think that the image is a little bit bluish. I don't know why, but we can fix that by going in the white balance. So we can bring some warmth in the image. So if we just go really slow until the red, green and blue can come in the same line. So now let's go before and after just for the white balance. This was before, you see a bit bluish, this after. Here it looks pretty good. And here what I want to do, I think the sky is a bit too bright. So I exactly know what I need to change. So here I think I want to change the luminance of the sky. So I would go to hue versus luminance, go to the graph hue versus luminance. We are already here. Here I want to reduce the brightness of the blues and see how it looks. Yeah, that looks really fine. That looks actually really good. Hue versus saturation is here in hue versus saturation curve, and maybe increase the saturation of the blues. And hue versus hue, see this was, I think it's too green now, so maybe reduce it a little bit. So if we go before and after just for the curves, this was before, this is after. So you see, you can bring the change in the colors, that looks really nice. And if we go before and after for the entire image, you go full screen, this was before, crazy difference, this is after. To be honest, we didn't really do much in this image. What did we do? We changed the white balance, which was here, it was too bluish, so I did it to a bit more warm because it's summer, I want to give summer look. And then we changed the exposure because this area was super dark, so I increased the shadows here, gave a little bit of boost by gamma. I didn't increase the gain, I actually reduced the gain because otherwise this whole thing would blow out. And then in final we didn't do much because the final was the same setting from the last. And then this node we didn't do much because there was nothing really particular which was highlighting. If things went bad, it would go bad for the entire sky. Color boost, we did color boost 8.5. I can maybe go a little bit lower. Maybe it's not even needed for this image. So even with the same camera on the same day, you can have different types of colors depending on the location, depending on how the sky is at that time, at what angle the sun is. So that's really tricky sometimes. And then hue versus hue, we went here and changed the colors of the greens, the blues and the reds, to make sure the skin is pretty good. Hue versus saturation, we increase the saturation of the greens, increase the saturations of the blues, reduce the saturation of the yellows a little bit, rest everything was the same. Hue versus luminance, increase the brightness of the skin tones, reduce the brightness of the yellows and the greens, otherwise they would be too distracting, and reduce the exposure or brightness of the blues so that this area, just the skin is popping out a bit more, you see. So that was one way to do color grading and color grading with the curves. So I hope that the curves are clear to you. I would really recommend you to pick up some footage from what I provided and just experiment with yourself first. Maybe experiment with a really well exposed image like this, and then if you're enjoying it, then go to the cloudy days or the days where it's not that pretty, and then try to make it pretty with the curves, with the exposure, and with all the techniques what I've told you. And in the next section, I'm going to teach you something brand new which is in DaVinci Resolve 19. So let's go.